9 straight Sweet 16s for Mark Few and Gonzaga, won 27 games and lost to a team that made the championship, the season after, as a 3 seed, losing to a team that goes and wins it all. So Gonzaga is still one of the top premier programs in college basketball, and maybe this is the year they cut down the nets. Christian and Nick here with Theo Lawson, who covers Gonzaga for the Spokesman-Review. Theo, thank you so much for joining us. I am not hiding the fact that Gonzaga is my title pick. I am a huge fan of this team. So tell us what you've been hearing this summer about how the team's coming together. And, if I assume the expectation, as it always is this is a team that can cut down the nets.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick at all. Obviously they have to get there again for the third time and finally win it. But they certainly have the experience to get back there. I was just looking at this. I think they return 81% of their minutes from last season, which is kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the, not rest of the country, but rest of kind of the top 25 teams. I think Houston's next, and I think they're at like 77%. So it's certainly a Gonzaga team that has a lot of experience. I don't think you look at this roster and pick out a guy who's a surefire, first round lottery pick type player like rosters past with Chet Holmgren, Jalen Suggs, guys like that. But certainly you have 8 to 9 guys who are obvious rotation guys. I think they really have a lot of depth. Obviously, Mark Few's teams are great offensively, and I think this will be another team that's in the top 3, top 5 in the country offensively. And obviously replacing Anton Watson was going to be difficult. He did so much for this program the last 5 years. I don't think people probably valued him enough. Obviously, the Boston Celtics did, drafting him in the second round. But if they can kind of manage to replace him, not dip too much on the defensive end, I certainly think they'll be there in the end. And they obviously are playing a tough non-conference schedule that should allow them to bump up their RPI and then potentially grab a top 2, top 3 seed in the tournament again.
You mentioned depth, and last season going into it, that was the one thing I was concerned about, was depth, especially when Steele Venters went down hurt. And unfortunately, for the second year in a row, he's going to miss the whole season. So prayers and thoughts out to him and everything, because me and Chris both really want him to suit up this year. But with that being said, they have depth this year. And 2 guys coming in that we're both really high on is Battle and Ajayi. Ajayi from Pepperdine and Battle from coming over from Arkansas. So with Venters out of the fold, where do we see those 2 guys starting off the bench, 6-man role? Where do you project them, and what do you expect from them this year?
Yeah, I think they brought in Ajayi kind of expecting he would replace Anton Watson at kind of that 3 spot. I think Anton was mainly a 3 last year, especially after they switched to the bigger lineup with Ben Gregg playing next to Graham Mike. But I fully expect Ajayi to start. He's probably their top NBA prospect. Everyone saw what he did last year at Pepperdine, including Gonzaga. Saw him twice in the WCC playing Pepperdine. Beat them pretty badly both times, but I think the coaching staff certainly saw someone in Ajayi who could fit that Watson role. And he's going to be a lot different than Anton Watson. I don't think he's nearly the defender that Anton was, but I think he's going to be a better rebounder. I think he's clearly a better shooter, 3-point shooter, so he's going to be able to stretch the floor a little bit and give them a little bit more on kind of the offensive end than Watson. So I kind of expect him to slide into that 3 spot this year if they continue to play that big lineup. I think Caleb Battle is probably going to be their first guy off the bench. I think he was brought in to be kind of the 6th man and someone who could step in and either replace like Hickman and kind of be that off guard next to Nembhard, or if they want to go smaller, they can kind of take Ben Gregg out of the lineup, plug Battle in, and have a really small, explosive lineup. But he's going to be someone who can get to the rim, just a really athletic, experienced guard. He's going to be a 6-year player, obviously, and I think everyone saw what he did last year at the end of the season for Arkansas, scoring 30, 40 points a game, three games in a row in the SEC. So he's going to be a handful for opposing teams, and he also draws a lot of fouls. He's going to get to the free throw line a ton, so creates a lot of foul pressure. And I think they really have a deep lineup, and I think he starts for most teams in the country, and he's going to be the first guy off the bench for potentially a top 5, top 10 Gonzaga team.
6 straight years Gonzaga's had a top 5 offense. You can basically pencil it in that this roster is going to be elite on that end of the floor, with Nembhard's ability as a playmaker out of the pick and roll, Ike being a dominant low post scorer, Nolan Hickman, who I was not much of a fan of his beginning of his career because just his lack of shooting ability, just and not being a good enough point guard to make up for the fact. Just I was just never a fan of him. But then last year he totally turned turn things around. And now you kind of have 2 point guards out there, which, few loves. And then you've got the versatility of Ajayi, who's not the defender of Watson, of course, but can do a lot of things on the offensive end, battle the microwave off the bench. And then Ben Gregg, when he came in to the starting lineup last year, can do so many things at 6'10". I always think every three he takes, he's going to make. And then, potentially a leap from Braden Huff. Point is, this offense is going to be really, really good. And so defense is the main thing, which, like 51st last year in just defense, 73rd the year before on KenPom. So obviously we lose Anton Watson. In a sense, he's a guy that is a bulldog on the defensive end. So tell us how you think defensively, whether it's a guy like Braden Huff taking a leave or EK continuing to improve on them, how can this team be a top 25 defense this year? Like, how will that come together?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the main question is you lose your best defender from a team that was, below average in terms of Mark Few's teams defensively. And how do you expect to get better on that side of the ball when you don't have Anton Watson suddenly? And, someone who I think was drafted primarily for what he can do on the defensive side of the ball. But I think Innocenti is a really interesting player. I don't really peg him as someone who's kind of in their main rotation. I don't think he's one of the top 3 guys off the bench, but I could see him being someone in certain matchups if they really need to stop an opposing guard wing that he could play, 10, 15 minutes. And, he's at least good for 3 or 4 fouls maybe. But, I certainly think they don't necessarily have to be a top 25 defensive team to kind of get where they want to go. I think they're going to be so good on offense that they can make up for a lot of that. But I think you definitely want to be inside like the top 40, the top 50 on the defensive end. And I think it's all just going to be about kind of playing good team defense. I think Ben Gregg is a solid defender. He's not athletic, but he's solid. I think Nolan Hickman is a little bit underrated as a defender. Graham Ike has shown he can play great defense. He had to play against Zach Edey a couple times last year, and I don't think anyone was stopping Edey. So, I think in most matchups he's able to kind of hold his ground on that side of the ball. But I really think they have to kind of commit to being better. And Michael Ajayi isn't someone who's known for his defense, but he also played on a Pepperdine team that really didn't prioritize that. So maybe they can unlock something there with him on the defensive side. And he's really athletic, kind of long, so he projects as someone who I think could turn into a serviceable defender. So I think there's potential there. Again, I don't see this being a top 20, top 25 team maybe on that side, but I think if they can be in the top 40, maybe even top 50 if they're that good on offense, I think it kind of evens the scales. And they certainly can't get any worse on defense if they want to get to the Final Four. But I think they have pieces that are experienced. I think Braden Huff is someone who can kind of turn into a better rim protector than maybe he was last year, and he'll get some more opportunities. So there's some pieces there. Maybe someone kind of emerges. You have Innocenti, who's kind of the defensive specialist on this team, and maybe he gets a few more minutes than we expect. Certainly now with Venters out of their rotation, so I think he could kind of steal a few of those minutes. So we'll kind of see. And again, I think you kind of just hope that they're top 40, top 50 on that side.
What would you say is the biggest issue with the defensive slide? Because Gonzaga was 10th in 2022, 11th in 2021, and first way back in 2017 in defense, adjusted defense per KenPom. And like Chris mentioned, 51st last season, 73rd prior. Do you think that was just like a personnel issue, or do you think some of the blame can be on Few and the staff, or what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's mainly personnel because you just look at their roster, and they're in a lot of, again, guys who are defensive specialists, or if you go back to the first national championship team, you had Zach Collins and Shemek Karnowski, 2 really good rim protectors. And then if you go back to their most recent national championship team, they didn't really have that rim protector with Drew Timme playing the 5. He's not known for his defense, but they certainly had good kind of point of attack on ball defenders. And Jalen Suggs, who is coming off an all defensive year in the NBA, and Andrew Nembhard, who's really big for his position, a great defender, Corey Kispert, Joel Ayayi. So they've had kind of 2 different styles of defensive teams when you look at their 2 national championship teams. And I don't see this as a team that really has an elite defender. So I think they just will have to kind of make up for it. But I don't think it's anything to do with coaching. I guess maybe if you want to at the end of the year, if they don't make the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, kind of point to their recruiting and maybe not having that player that can kind of carry you on that side of the ball. But I don't think it's coaching as much as just the kind of roster assembly and recruiting the right guys to play to stand out on that side of the ball. And obviously losing Anton Watson's a huge blow.
On the perimeter, guys like Hickman, Battle, Ajayi are guys that have the traits to be really good perimeter defenders, which is something that I'm optimistic about. And just when you are an absolute wagon offensively and you're well coached, like the buy-in defensively should be really high. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I think even if this talent wise, like maybe this is, or they're good enough to be fine, like to win as many games as possible, like with a top 40, 50 defense, I still think they can kind of overperform just because of how good they'll be offensively. And because they know that is where they should be spending most of their focus because of how naturally offense will come. I want to talk a bit about Battle, because Battle's a guy, I saw him play when he was at Temple. And he had some ridiculous shots. He can score from all three levels. You mentioned his ability to get to the free throw line, just the way he attacks the basket. But at Temple and then Arkansas was kind of just a train wreck last year. But there's just been issues from some. I mean, not inside the situation, but I've noticed there have been issues with him from a chemistry perspective, or just his happiness with playing time or getting the ball. So when you come to a program like Gonzaga, where you're potentially the sixth man, like, he knows that this is a different experience, right, than being the man at Temple or going to, Arkansas, which is a lot of ISO ball, which is a lot of get yours and on your way to the NBA. So what has can you tell us how it transpired of Battle coming to Gonzaga, and if you've heard anything about his perception on he's ready to be a guy that buys in more defensively or is cool with being the sixth man and understands they kind of already have 2 point guards. So even though he can be this microwave guy that comes in and gives them some instant offense, that they might not need that a lot of the time. So how do you think it will all fit with him? And do you think he's emotionally matured and ready to be a part of a winning team?
Yeah. From everything I've heard, I think he was the one that maybe initiated contact with Gonzaga. Don't quote me on that for sure, but I think that might be the case. And I think he wanted to go somewhere where, he hasn't done a lot of winning in his career. Probably assumed he could have done that at Arkansas, just given their track record the last 3-4 years, but certainly didn't happen last year with that program. So I think he kind of looked at his career and just realized he had 1 season left to kind of make something out of it and try to make that next step that would get him to the NBA and play in an NCAA tournament. And I think the fact that he's willing to, he's a New Jersey kid who's been at Temple and Arkansas, and the fact that he's willing to go across the nation to play for Gonzaga and a small cold town in Spokane, Washington, I think shows that he's maybe more about the team accolades and winning than scoring 25 a game, starting, getting a lot of minutes. So obviously when you commit to Gonzaga, he committed after I think it was well known that Nolan Hickman and Ryan Nembhard were coming back. So I don't think he can expect that he's immediately going to get the starting nod as soon as he arrives. So I think there was an expectation that he might have to come off the bench. Certainly they can play that 3-guard lineup that I talked about, but I would imagine he's the first guy off the bench. And so I think he probably had to reset his expectations again. I think, hopefully we get to. I haven't had a chance to really talk with him since he got to Spokane, but I think that'll be an interesting question as to why he chose a program like Gonzaga at this stage in his career. Obviously, Mark Few's track record of getting players to the NBA is very strong at this point. So I think that if you do the right things at Gonzaga, they can develop you and give you a chance to kind of make that next level. So I'm guessing it was all about winning and kind of shifting his expectations, and hopefully he kind of knows what his role is going to be. Otherwise, it could be a long season.
Yeah, I'm in a camp that when you have a player a little reckless abandon and they go to a really good team with a really good coach, it all works out. And I think it will battle with Gonzaga. The front court, Ben Gregg, averaged 9 last season, 38% from 3. Is there still an untapped potential and ceiling with him this season? And Graham Ike, obviously, loved his game at Wyoming. Had to miss it. Graham Ike. I always say Ike.
A lot of people do that. You're not the first.
I don't know why I was doing that. Anyways, Graham Ike, loved his game at Wyoming. Had to miss a year due to an injury. He played 24 minutes last season. Was he just in foul trouble a lot? I can't really remember. I feel like he was in foul trouble. I don't think it was a conditioning thing. Obviously, you want to play more than 24 minutes. But what can we expect this year out of those two guys?
Yeah, I think with Ike's minutes last season, I really think a lot of it was kind of precautionary, especially early on. He wasn't playing 30 minutes ever, and so he certainly looks like someone when you watch him who should be playing 35 plus minutes every game, kind of like Drew Timme was. His time at Gonzaga, you just couldn't afford to take him off the court. But I think he was still just kind of easing back into things. He'd spent the last summer kind of rehabbing, and I think it was more of a long-term play with him that you don't want to re-aggravate anything early on in the season. And his minutes got higher as kind of the season wore on. And I think they also just felt good about having, at that point, Ben Gray coming off the bench and being able to kind of plug that hole. So I expect a lot from that front court pairing. And Gonzaga really changed last season when Ben Gray went into the starting lineup. I believe it was a game down at Pepperdine, and that just kind of changed the way they played. I think they got better defensively because I think like I said, Ben Gray, not a lot of athleticism, not going to be the best rim protector, but he's solid, strong, fundamental. So I think he was a better defensive option certainly than Dusty Stromer, who was starting the first kind of half of the season. So I really do like that front court pairing. I think most of Mark Few's best teams have had that really kind of all-American caliber. I'm not saying Ike is an all-American per se, but all-American caliber big man who can run the floor, who's a really good passer, and obviously can score in the low post and score at a high rate. So he's going to be really efficient, and assuming he can kind of keep us off, I only expect him to get better. And Greg, we kind of didn't really see a whole lot of him before he kind of went into that starting lineup last year. He certainly came off the bench quite a bit for that team, but I think we were able to see a little bit more of what he can do, and he's someone who can stretch the floor and make threes and kind of bruise with big guys down in the post too. So I think he was really effective. I think his best game was the game at Kentucky that a lot of people felt like kind of sealed their NCAA tournament berth last season. So he had some really big games. I expect him to kind of grow. And I also think that Braden Huff kind of adds a unique dimension when he comes in, most likely for Ike, because he can also stretch the floor. And Mark Few's kind of compared his low post scoring ability, his touch, to Drew Timme. The one thing Few has said probably 30 times that he just has a ball that goes in. So he can score a lot. He can do a few things that Ike can't. So I think that also makes it interesting when you're playing teams that kind of get used to having that load down low in Graham Ike, and then Gonzaga can kind of switch it up and have Braden Huff next to Ben Gregg, next to Jaye, next to potentially Battle, and then you have five guys who can stretch the floor and make threes at a pretty high clip, all playing together. And I think teams have to really kind of shift what they're doing defensively to kind of account for that.
Yeah, it's quite the front court. They all have varied skill sets, and just offensively, there's no drop off. Couple more things about the front court. So one, Ike in the 2 games against Purdue shot 4 of 10 combined from threes. I know he didn't really shoot many threes throughout the season, but with Zach Edey, it was just a weird game. And it's like, hey, we can get a wide open look with Ike at the top of the key. Like, let's maybe take it. Like, he's a 79% free throw shooter last year. Like, do you think he can potentially shoot some more threes this year?
Yeah, I don't know if that's something that Mark Few wants a whole lot of. I think when Drew Timme started doing that a little bit too much, you would always look at the bench and kind of see Few's reaction after that second Drew Timme 3 went up and was nowhere close to making it. So I think I think certainly that's probably something that Graham Ike has worked on, because as you guys know, to play in the NBA as a big man at his size, he's not huge. I think he's going to have to be able to stretch out and shoot the 3 a little bit better. But I do remember Matt Painter saying in the post-game presser after that Purdue game that Graham Ike shooting threes wasn't really in our scouting report, and I think he did point out that stat against Purdue that he just happened to make all of his threes against Purdue in those 2 matchups last season. So I think maybe you see a little bit more of it, but I think Mark Few knows what Ike's bread and butter is, and I don't think he wants him to stray too far away from that. And they do have a ton of capable 3-point shooters around him. So if he can, make the opponent, not guard him and hit a few threes, and then they have to guard him a little bit more, that certainly gives Gonzaga an advantage. But I don't think it's something that's going to become a revelation that Ike shooting threes this year.
Fair. I'm a huge fan of Ike, and even if he's not Drew Timme, he captures that same thing of like, if you're one-on-one with a post in him, like, good luck. Like he's gonna score like the vast majority of the time. Like, he's that good. And Huff is, almost Huff 8 against weaker competition, but I still think Huff can be a guy that is on the Timme track, as you mentioned. Another thing I want to point out is, I said at the beginning that you lost to UConn and Purdue the last 2 tournaments. Gonzaga was playing really good ball with both those teams, right? And it's like, you just ran into teams that just had mismatches and could kind of bully you. It's like, it was Edey, which was a mismatch for everyone, and whether it was Sanogo or Klingon, and obviously that UConn team was a wagon, but it's like, I still feel like Gonzaga was playing so well both those tournaments, and you just kind of ran into a team that just had a little bit too much. But I look at the college basketball landscape this year, and I'm like, I don't really know if that's like a thing that can stop them, which is why I guess I'm so optimistic. And then I guess two more guys I want to talk about are more wing depth in Dusty Stromer and Jun-Suk Yo, I think is how you say it. I heard a lot of hype about the Korean guy last season. He didn't see much playing time, and then Stromer obviously was thrust into the starting lineup prematurely. He wasn't really ready for that. Everything got better when Ben Gregg, but there were definitely moments during the season where Dusty Stromer played really well when his role was a bit more defined. Do you think those guys will factor in significantly this year? Have you heard anything about their improvements?
Yeah, I think Stromer is definitely someone you pencil into one of those kind of three bench spots. I think it's going to be Battle, Stromer, and Huff coming off the bench primarily for this team. Mark Few has a lot of depth. I think he has like 10, 11 guys who could play, but I think he normally likes to keep his rotations pretty small, especially in some of these bigger non-conference games and also in the tournament. I mean, last year they were playing 6, 7 guys most games, especially down the stretch and in the tournament. They also didn't really have the depth that they have this year, but I think he just likes to kind of dial in his top 8 and roll with those guys. So Jun-Suk Yo, I think is someone who, hopefully he sticks around and can kind of benefit from developing under Mark Few. I think he's going to play more this year, but I think he's someone that maybe a few of us thought would try to transfer and play somewhere else and get more minutes. So I'm not sure he's someone who factors in quite as much. I honestly think if there is a 9th guy, it would be Innocenti playing off the bench. So and they're kind of the same position, kind of long wing. So but who knows? We'll kind of see what Yo does and kind of the minutes against the lesser opposition. Stromer had kind of an up and down year last year, like you said. I think he came into the season not expecting to start. Still Ventures goes down a couple days before the season opener. He has to start. And then, halfway into the season, he's taken back out of the starting lineup. Obviously, they weren't playing as well and felt that they could do a few more things with Gregg in that lineup. So he really had kind of an up and down year where his expectations shifted a few times. And I think he kind of handled the roller coaster really well and really kind of came alive late in the year and really helped them in some of these bigger games. Was actually pretty effective in the 2 tournament games that they won against McNeese and Kansas. So I think he really got a lot better and kind of settled into his role. I think it would be hard for someone, that young to, go into the lineup, taken out of the lineup and kind of respond the right way emotionally. And I think he did. So he's someone who should kind of take another leap and someone that can play a few different spots too. So he's pretty reliable. And he won the 3-point shooting contest at their kind of recent preseason event, Craziness in the Kennel. So I think he'll take another leap and probably someone who definitely is starting and playing big minutes for this team next season.
Any last thoughts, Nick?
No, just last thoughts, I guess, would be Braden Smith. It's pretty cool that a guy went to the tournament 2 years in a row with Colgate. Now he's traveling across the country, the red shirt with the team. That just, to me, that speaks volumes on Mark Few as a coach and just the culture that's built at Gonzaga. And it's cool to have a really good point guard waiting in the wings for next season. Yeah,
I think just the fact that he's a Seattle kid, so he's technically coming back home, closer to home. But I think the fact that Mark Few has built this program that a player of the year in the Patriot League and someone who's been to the tournament twice and is willing to come in redshirt and learn under Ryan Nembhard and kind of understanding that the long-term play is maybe more valuable than going to somewhere. I think Cal is one of his options and potentially playing right away for a program that maybe isn't known to produce quite the same level of NBA talent at that point guard spot as Gonzaga. So certainly someone else that they can count on if you cross your fingers that nothing happens to their starting guards. But I think if something did happen, you would feel like you don't have much drop off at all if he has to come in and play spell Ryan Nembhard or Nolan Hickman or Battle. So hopefully he doesn't play this season. I think that's the plan for him and can develop. And they've had a long track record of redshirting guys dating all the way back to Kelly Olynyk. Obviously Braden Huff redshirted his first year recently, and so they've had Nigel Williams-Goss with the redshirt year, Brandon Clark, a lot of guys who have taken advantage of that redshirt year and gone on to play in the NBA. So certainly it's I think it's a better long-term play if you can join a top 5, top 10 program like Gonzaga that's known to produce NBA point guards, and he'll have the the offense, the keys to the offense next year, assuming everything goes as planned.
100%. A few parting thoughts. We barely even talked about Ryan Nembhard. Obviously, he's a stud. 7 assists last year, 13 points. You'd like to see the 3-point percentage jump up from 32. That's kind of my only thing with him, but you know, we know what he can do. And just my last pitch, I guess, on this being a title contending team, like we talked about this offense is like penciling in as a top 5 offense. Get the defense in the, I know you can say 40-50. I'm optimistic. Let's break the top 30, but like, how do you guard this team? Like, and I know Kansas didn't have McCullough last year and that Dickinson can't really move his feet, but like that game especially, it's like with I don't know what point guard juice Mr. Nemhard gave his kids in Canada, but those kids are just so good at running the pick and roll and making decisions and playmaking. And then it's like you got 2 really good post scores, 1 absolutely dominant post scorer, like bigs that can stretch the floor, a guy like Ajayi who won't be Anton Watson, but can be that versatile 6'7" forward who can cut, who can play make, who can give you a bit of everything. Like even Innocenti averaged 3 assists a game as like a freshman at Tarleton. Battle is like a super talented one-on-one scorer. Hickman continues to get better. Like it's just a really fun team. It's like the offense is going to be unstoppable. And I just believe in the shifting college landscape to like, this just feels to me like the year where Mark Few can cut down the nets because everyone else is kind of scrambling and like trying to figure out how to get their footing in this new era of college basketball. And Mark Few is just doing the same thing. And we know what to expect on a 90-night out basis. And if they're hitting shots, like you can't, like, good luck. Like you can't stop this offense if they're hitting shots. That's how I see it. So that's what
I think the one thing maybe we didn't talk about is Hickman and kind of his growth. And you talked about the last couple of years were kind of shaky for him, but 2 years ago he was playing out of position. He was their primary point guard. I don't think he was brought in to be a point guard. And his freshman year didn't play a lot. So I think last year he kind of finally played his true position, off the ball a little bit more. Obviously with Ryan Nemhard, you have as pure of a point guard as there is in the country. So I think that really kind of unlocked his ability to shoot a little bit more and kind of take advantage of more shots. So I think he is someone who can also take a step. I think he's their best defender at the guard spot. So I expect another leap from him. And if he can do that and everyone else kind of can take a small jump too, it's going to be a team that's going to be scoring in the 90s a lot of nights. And I think you're going to have to score 90 against Gonzaga a lot of nights to keep up with them. And so again, we'll see if Gonzaga can stop enough teams from scoring 90. I think they probably can. But if you run into a buzzsaw team like a Purdue or UConn, that's going to be tough. But I don't think one of those teams exists this year. I think one of those teams would have given this Gonzaga team issues again. But when you look at the landscape, like you said, I don't think that team's out there. So ideally, you want to get a good seed so you don't have to run into another top seed early on like they did last year in Purdue, and see if they can make another run and 9 straight Sweet 16s, get it to 10, and then see what happens from there. You lean on your experience, your ability to score in the post, and kind of all the things that's made Gonzaga great the last 2 decades.
100%. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Theo. Hope you enjoy basketball season up there in Spokane, and it's great to meet you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me.